Compass Mining makes Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone. Start mining in as little as 48 hours with our turnkey hardware, online, and mining directly to your Bitcoin wallet within 2 business days. Find out more at compassmining.io and get started now. Hey miners, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the new home of power mining analysis. In today's episode, Anthony Power and I have a slammed agenda for you. We brought along some key tables and metrics in the Bitcoin mining space, including a mid-morning market update, see who's up, down on the trading session. We're also going to be taking a look at market cap, ETF action, and some of the key trends, observations, and takeaways that we've gathered in the Bitcoin mining sector over the last few months. Now, before we get into all that, please take a second, smash the like button, you guys. It's a big help to myself, the channel. Anthony loves it. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join and let us know in the comments section below how you're feeling in terms of your portfolio, your outlook on the mining sector overall, and your price target for Bitcoin in the final few months of 2024. Now, with that being said, let's get into today's video. Okay guys, so that's right. Today's video, Tuesday morning, a mixed day in terms of trading for the Bitcoin miners. We brought along a couple interesting tables and charts to talk through in today's presentation. Curious to get your thoughts on a few of these numbers, Anthony. But before we do, wanted to see how you're feeling today.
Yeah, feeling good today. Green day yesterday, sort of mixed day today. But the price is hovering around 57,000, so better than it was at the weekend.
Yeah, it's interesting to see if we can build any momentum on this little bull run we've started yesterday. A fairly strong day for the miners. We held that into close. Now, Anthony, the first chart I wanted to get your take on comes from HODL 15 Capital and talks about ETF inflows, or maybe I should say outflows, I guess, from last week. We've brought this chart up quite a bit on our channel. We were seeing very strong inflows, consecutive green days, day after day, and then really started to break down in a big way. We saw red day after day after day, and finally we're able to break that streak yesterday. So it seems big money is returning back into the space. But it is interesting now, Anthony, with the dynamic of these ETFs. We didn't really have this before, where you had this level of visibility into the buying and selling. Seems a lot of the ETF holders maybe are more of the paper hands as opposed to the diamond hands, if we go back to the meme trade days, as they really do fly out of these ETFs quite quickly when the Bitcoin price turns.
So yeah, so the liquidity of these types of investments means that they can be rapidly bought into or sold. And as we can see there, from August the 27th through to September the 6th, well over $1 billion in Bitcoin outflowed from the ETFs. Now, we haven't sort of seen probably that amount of red days in succession too many times during the first 8-9 months. We saw plenty of green days all the way through the first 5 or 6 months. But the Bitcoin price, rallied to 74,000 back in March. It also hit 71,000 in June, but it's pulled back a little bit. It was at 54,000 at the weekend. So now starting to climb again at 57,000 today. So, a few green sheets, $28 million inflowed back into these ETFs yesterday, and we might see another potential green day today. But I think if you look at just the macroeconomic picture, the stock markets have been in the same sort of turmoil over the last few weeks. The US dollar is, again, it looks weak compared to a number of other currencies. I looked at the sterling compared to the dollar, and sterling's been a lot stronger, something like about 11-12% stronger than the dollar over the last 12 months. So great if you're in the UK visiting America, because things will be that little bit more cheaper. And bear in mind, just over 2 years ago, when we had Liz Truss as the Prime Minister for literally about 2 months, the pound actually dropped to like nearly parity with the dollar. So that was literally 1 for 1. Today it's about $1.31 to the pound. So you can see like a 30% improvement in the pound over the last couple of years. So we've seen that strength there. Not great if you're in the UK buying these US stocks, because you're seeing a weakness in the US dollar, and therefore that erodes your investment. So, the people in the UK who buy these mining stocks, and there'll be a lot of people buying, bear in mind, people got into mining because of Argo blockchain back in 2020, 2021, when it was one of the top mining companies, in public companies in the world, and then got interested in these other stocks that are around at the same time, like the Bitfarms, the Hives, the Huts, the Marathons, the Riots. And since then, I've got into other companies like CleanSpark, IREN, CIFR, TeraWulf. So, that this exchange rate is another variable that investors have to compete with when you're looking at your portfolio.
Yeah, they certainly do. We haven't talked a lot about the foreign exchange impact in terms of holding Bitcoin miners, but it's definitely one to be aware of. There was a time way back when, Anthony, I believe around the 2008 subprime mortgage crisis, where the US dollar was actually below the Canadian dollar as well. But times have sure changed, and we're now quite a step down from there, or the pound. Now, you talk about miners trading green yesterday. If we bring up kind of the mid-morning market update here, Anthony, I've drawn us a nice little square, really mixed across the board. We have about half of the miners up, half of the miners down. Marathon, I believe they've come out with some new branding or a new corporate name. They seem to be leading the pack today on that news. But really a mixed bag today. Hey, not a lot of standouts. We were talking if there's any patterns of the peer plays or the HPC exposure, but really looks like quite a choppy trading session.
Yeah, just I think at pre-market and now before pre-market, most of these mining companies were in the green. As the Bitcoin price got back above 57,000 and change, and then as the market opened in the US, Bitcoin price then started to drop below 57,000, and as soon as that happened, we just saw a sea of red against the miners, and it's sort of just been playing that volatile way now, as we've talked about numerous times on the podcast.
Yeah.
So last time I looked, like you're right there, literally half or just less than half were in green, and the rest were in red. But we're not talking, major differences, within about 2% either way, effectively.
Gotcha. Now, a couple big events coming up. Obviously, we've got Bitcoin Amsterdam, October 9th and 10th. We're going to be attending that one, be in Amsterdam for about 10 days. So I'll get to enjoy some of that currency exchange firsthand. We just talked about, Anthony. But in addition to that, there's a big HC Wainwright conference going on right now. Pretty quiet in terms of news this week from the miners. I know we had a lot of August production results, but in terms of actual press releases, not a ton coming out. And you astutely mentioned, Anthony, that a lot of the CEOs are actually attending this conference, which you say we may be going to next year as well.
Well, it's certainly one that we'd like to, be involved in and go to and get to see the miners, firsthand. So yeah, certainly get in the diary next year. New York's a good location as well to get to from the UK. It's probably one of the closest cities to arrive in the US. So it's a 7-hour flight from London, as opposed to sort of the 10 hours for Nashville and Dallas. So that makes a bit of a difference there. But yeah, there's some big panels today. So Ben Gagnon and Sam Tabar and Fred Thiel and Adam Sullivan. They're on a panel together discussing, mining with Anthony Scaramucci as the moderator. So that should be a great panel. Hopefully, they put a copy of it out on social media so we can catch up with what was said, and learn some more insights. But to be honest with you, if you think about where we are this year compared to previous years, this year has been so different in terms of people having access to CEOs and to senior directors from all these companies, the chief mining officers, etc. I've been in communication with many of them over the last 4 years, but that's not the norm. That wasn't normal. But this year, we've seen. I mean, obviously with Power Analysis, we've interviewed over 50 CEOs and other senior management or executives from these companies in the first 8 months of the year. And we've got a calendar booked up right through to the end of December to get more done. But this year we've seen a lot of high level people going on Spaces calls on X, and so therefore you've seen a lot more people getting access to their teams that they're invested in, and they want to ask them questions. And we've seen some really good responses from some of these teams. I mean, I've particularly liked Patrick Fleury from TeraWulf, the CFO of TeraWulf. He's been on a few Spaces meetings. I've jumped in and just listened to meetings. I'm not going in there as a speaker or anything like that, but just to listen to him respond to some of the questions. Very open and transparent. Sam Tabar as well. Sam Tabar he's been on I think he's been on our channel more than any other CEO. I looked the other day. I think I've done 4 or 5 interviews this year with us on the channel. But on Spaces as well, he's given plenty of access to various Spaces meetings. Always happy to provide an insight into what Bit Digital are doing in terms of mining operations, in terms of the fact that they're now growing the HPC side of things. They're looking to, in the future, buy their own facility because they feel that's probably the missing piece of the jigsaw that the market want to see. So Sam firmly believes that Bit Digital are seriously undervalued compared to, peer miners, on the grounds that they've got a significant HPC deal. Now, that HPC deal at the moment is earning more revenues than their Bitcoin mining service. So why aren't they getting the same sort of recognition for that? And he believes that maybe that's to do with the fact that the market wants to see them own a site, because at the moment, Bit Digital operate effectively as a very asset-light company. They host their self-mining operations. They have got a lease for their HPC facilities in Iceland. They've leased the GPUs. Obviously, they pay the energy charge associated, so they have a contract with the energy provider. But it's very, very, very much asset light. In fact, it's as asset light as you can probably get, because when I last asked Sam how many employees he had in the company, and this was probably before they employed a few more in terms of the HPC AI, in terms of sales and marketing teams. But at one point, it was like 15 employees in the company, so able to deliver what they deliver on that price there. So. Certainly one, who I mean, he was on Spaces yesterday for a meeting there with a few of the regular people, and I tuned in, just listened for 10-15 minutes last night, and he come across very much positive, answered all the questions.
You talk about the market cap and Sam Tabar talking about potentially a spin out or something like that. So we've got a slide talking about Bitcoin miner market caps. Before we get to that, though, I wanted to ask you one question about this H.C. Wainwright discussion or event. We're starting to see now really a shift from the retail audience into the institutional corporate kind of investment banks that are getting involved in this space. Obviously, as a result, really, of the CoreWeave deal, the HPC, the predictable revenues that you've talked about. Can you just speak a little bit, as someone who's been in this space for 4 years now, how you've seen this space kind of transition from retail to institution? And do you think the institutional investors are used to this level of transparency, openness, interaction with the CEOs?
I don't think any other industry out there has this much transparency as what the Bitcoin mining execs have given, certainly over this last 7 or 8 months. And bear in mind, if you go back to 2021, it was Peter Wall from Argo Blockchain who started to deliver this type of transparency. I mean, he was holding, investor Q&A sessions live on YouTube every sort of fortnight. You could send your questions in. He'd answer a random amount of questions. I had a couple of questions responded to on some of those early YouTube videos. So, Peter did all his monthly updates by YouTube as well. So yes, you got a physical, a news update in terms of, by the internet, but he would also do a virtual, a YouTube update and go through and talk through some of those points in a lot more detail. And so he was really the first one. And to be honest with you, the shareholders loved it. Now, the good thing is when the Bitcoin price is rising and the share price is rising in these companies, you want to be on YouTube every day and on these social media channels. As soon as it turns, you see sight and the sound of any of them. So, are we going to see the same this year? I'm not sure, because I think when we look at the miners now, and most of them now will have gone through a cycle, they've gone through a halving. They've all gone through a halving recently. I mean, we talk about how old are these mining companies, end of this month, Hive, the oldest miner, will celebrate 7 years as a public mining company. That's nothing. That's not even 2 full cycles. But they have been through 2 halvings. So, they've been through the current halving now and the previous halving, 2020. So they've been through 2 halvings. They are experienced, but some of these mining companies that we talk about on a daily basis have only been through 1 halving. So they're still learning, but they are learning. And what you can see now is this year, the growth in hash rate this year, the lack of miners going out there and using debt to grow as they did in 2021, when they thought they were indestructible and they could go out there and borrow the earth and didn't really care about the interest rates being 18, 19, 20%, because the market was still in its infancy in regards to lending money to Bitcoin miners, where they had no idea about the price. And as soon as that price dropped, you just saw a number of miners, probably 5 or 6 miners, who'd taken out debt to grow and then had to start making repayments when the Bitcoin price is dropping. All their mining machines were held as collateral against the loans, and lo and behold, that collateral was dropping in value on a sort of like daily basis, because the value of these machines, again, just like stocks, they're correlated with the Bitcoin price. I mean, we saw mining companies paying $25-30 a terahash back in 2021, and then towards the end of 2021 they were paying $80-90 a terahash, 3 times to what other miners have been paying. We haven't seen that sort of disparity this year. We've seen miners getting these really efficient miners, the S21s, the T21s, the micro BT equivalents, the Canaan equivalents, and some of them were getting these machines $14, $16, $18 a terahash for the most efficient miners, twice as efficient as those miners that they were buying back in, or more than twice as efficient, those miners were backing back in 2021.
Compass Mining is your trusted partner in Bitcoin mining. Whether you're investing in 1 machine or thousands, our customizable solutions are tailored to meet your needs. We are your experts in Bitcoin mining, offering a platform where individuals and businesses can purchase hardware, host machines, and access a range of ancillary Bitcoin mining services. We also specialize in large-scale site development and data center operations. Discover more at compassmining.io and see how we can power your success today. Just to jump in there, you guys, we talk about Bitcoin miners being a leveraged play on Bitcoin a lot on the channel. Sometimes you'll hear the multiples 2 to 3 times. If Bitcoin moves up 10%, the miners move 20 or 30. That's a key point Anthony just mentioned. Is part of the reason for that leverage nature is not only if Bitcoin price goes up, does the value of their HODL go up, but the value of their equipment, their data centers, their power agreements, obviously their production value. That's why you get that leveraged kind of play. And Anthony, you're exactly right. If you have a fleet of 200,000 machines and all of a sudden the price of those machines triples or quadruples, you're sitting on a huge appreciation in terms of CapEx.
And yeah, and even if we go down to, let's move away from these big mining companies and look at the retail investors who've actually gone in to do their own Bitcoin mining through a third party. So they've gone out there and maybe purchased 2 or 3 machines, just for a bit of fun to be part of this amazing business. Seeing the price of Bitcoin, change and hopefully go up, and they're hoping that they get some revenues from the Bitcoin mined and the price increases, so they get a little bit more revenues. But also at the same time, if the actual Bitcoin price rallies, then the value of their machines, again, it's a commodity. So, it might be capital growth of equipment plus potential, revenues and profits from mining Bitcoin. So two aspects to that retail investor looking into going into the market and maybe doing mining through a third party, for instance.
Yeah, really interesting. You and I have joked about maybe not even a joke anymore about getting one of those desk miners. And you brought up the one that's a heater, Anthony. My studio's in the basement here. It's getting a little cold in Canada. I might get a self miner, try and get a solo block. Anyways, with that being said, the next table, Anthony, is one of our favorites. It's a market cap table or arrangement. And we're starting to really see some moves here. We've separated it into 3 different categories. So we did a video probably 6 months ago now, Anthony, talking about tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 miners. So similar kind of theory here or thought process. We're now looking at a billion plus, between a billion to 100 million, and then sub 100 million. You've talked a lot on the channel, Anthony, about the have-nots. We've talked about Core Scientific's ascension up the ladder here towards that top spot. What are you seeing right now based on the market cap, the current share price of these companies with this most recent pullback?
Yeah, I mean, the pullback over the last, month or so has been quite dramatic in terms of the mining valuations. We had, literally, 4, 6 weeks ago, there was 10, 11 miners with a market cap of over a billion, and now we're at 6. Bear in mind, go back just over a year ago, and we only had 2 miners that were over a billion. That was Marathon and Riot. And so, we have seen some real positivity in 2023, 2024 as these mining companies have grown and grown significantly from a hash rate perspective. We've seen quite a lot of movement this year. So we saw CleanSpark, once they'd reached $1 billion in market capitalization, it took them, I don't know, 3 years to achieve that figure from when they started, and it took them a further something like 14 or 12 or 14 days to get to 2 billion. And then within about 6 months, they were at 4 billion. Well, today they're back down to sort of just over 2.2 billion. So they've lost literally 50% of their valuation since the end of March, when it had achieved well over 4 billion at that point in time. And the share price reflective of that. So the share price, $8.85, it was close to $24. So you can see that it's come down quite significantly from its high this year. Stocks that have done really well this year, you've got to look at Core Scientific. Comes out of Chapter 11 on the January the 24th, and basically just updates throughout the year with just fantastic updates. Great team led by Adam Sullivan, the CEO. We're fortunate to have been down to the flagship site at Denton, which is going to be one of their 5 sites for delivering HPC hosting. And, they've got a mining business with over 20 exahash, a hosted mining business with 5 to 6 exahash. And, to top that off, they've got 382 megawatts allocated to HPC hosting, which will start from early 2025. And with a total contract value of 6.7 billion, and 4.7 billion of that is net profit, you can understand why their market capitalization has zoomed up to 2.6 billion already this year, and will without any shadow of doubt significantly grow further than that as they start providing updates of the warrants that will be exercised into shares, providing them an even greater market capitalization. accordingly, when the revenues start coming in next year, that will also tip them over. And as I predicted, not that many weeks ago, when cores were lagging behind CleanSpark and Riot, that they would achieve top spot soon. I'm sort of well on track for that to be delivered.
You certainly are, buddy. We're all rooting for you. Question on Core Scientific. What do you make of the extension of the CoreWeave option for the remaining or the additional megawatts there? Is that an indicator that they are going to be going through? Do you not know what to make of that? What's your take on that?
I take it as positive. I mean, if there was no doubt, if there was any doubt that they wouldn't, why would you offer an extension? So there must be still within talks there to try and see if they want to take up that option there. So given a bit more time to deliver that, but it sounds, from my perspective, it sounds positive. We've been fortunate to be in that room with Adam, with the other sort of 40 Wall Street analysts who attended that meeting back in June. And everybody who came out of that meeting was extremely positive in terms of the body language that Adam and the team portrayed throughout that day, not just in that meeting there, but we actually had a visit to the site and were taken around by very senior managers. Lots of questions were asked about the HPC side. So I take it as positive news. They had 50 expressions of interest when they first went to the market. And yes, there were expressions from some smaller companies who wanted a smaller amount of potential GPU, sort of like power. But when they narrowed it down and set some criteria to say, look, they're only interested in companies that wanted over 100 million and were prepared to actually offer some way of paying upfront for the capital to be to convert some of these facilities into HPC, that narrowed it from 50 down to about 10. So CoreWeave, were a standout company, and you can see from the open and transparency of that contract why they were. But if CoreWeave don't take up the option, I'm sure there are still potentially some of those other 9 companies that are interested could come forward and have an option. But the ball's in CoreWeave's court, and I probably expect to hear another announcement next 3 to 4 weeks to say that they've decided to take up the remaining 118 megawatts and have the whole 500 megawatts under one roof. Bear in mind, CoreWeave are a current client of Core Scientific. So Core Scientific already host some of their GPUs in one of their facilities and have been doing since March this year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that contract itself plays out. And as we've talked about recently, Anthony, the next big hyperscaler contract that will be announced in the space, it feels like something big is pending or imminent here. We'll see and stay tuned for that. Now, before we go here, I did want to just quickly call out the smaller group, Anthony, the sub $100 million players here. We've interviewed all of these CEOs as well. Talked about growth opportunities. They're definitely open to M&A. They're having a lot of discussions. We've seen some smaller in the form of Gryphon for sure pick up some smaller contracts, but great energy pricing. What do you make of the sub 100 million group? Do you think they're the most at risk right now with current Bitcoin and hash price?
I mean, when you say at risk, I think the challenge is how do you grow? And we spoke to a number of these CEOs in recent weeks, actually. 3 or 4 of those that bottom group in the last couple of weeks, and we've asked that question to all of them. And certainly some of those would be open to if the right deal was placed where it made sense for both companies to merge and to be able to grow accretively that way. We've seen a merger of equals already. So at the end of last year, we saw USBTC and HUT8 merge, and you could see the benefits that each provided to each other. So you had USBTC having facilities, access to power in America, but literally no sort of like funding to sort of support what they were trying to deliver. And on the other hand, you had HUT8 in Canada, who had mining machines, but a lack of facilities and plenty of treasury in terms of a hodl with over the 9,000 Bitcoin. So them two joined together has given both the opportunity. They've relocated to America and done it that way. So some of these smaller ones will have looked at that and thought, actually, that's a way to do it, maybe to look at how they can merge. But then you've got the likes of DMG, who Sheldon's built that company up from the bottom up there. Sorry, previously with Bitfury, learned his trade there, but then 8 years ago set up DMG, and they've been listed since 2018. So they're one of the older miners as well. It's generally those Canadian miners that are the oldest miners. But I'm not sure he'd be like, he set up that company. It's his baby. They're looking to a lot of different revenue streams potentially with the pool that they're looking at, with the green Bitcoin that has been mined going into that pool, and therefore having green Bitcoin for transactions. And they've got the self-mining. They're looking at potentially HPC because they've got access to power. So lots of moving parts, but capital's required to help you grow. So that's going to be the sort of the challenge for them. So yeah, all those five there have sort of been in that position under that 100 million for a significant time now. Just going back to the top group there, that we talked about Core Scientific, but actually TeraWulf needs to have a little bit of a discussion today, because their market cap at 1.5 billion suggests that something's going to be imminently released from TeraWulf. So there is a lot of speculation that in the same way that Core Scientific announced a big HPC partner, TeraWulf could be the next company as well. And if it's not TeraWulf, it could be CIFR Mining. But if you look at TeraWulf's market capitalization, bear in mind they're at 10 exahash, 1.5 billion. They paid all their debt off recently, so they're at sort of like nearly zero debt now on the balance sheet. But then look at the mining company below them, IREN, and IREN have got 16 exahash, operating at the highest efficiency in the market at the moment. So more efficient, probably 30% more efficient than the miners at CleanSpark, and you can see that their market capitalization is 160 million less than TeraWulf, which is quite surprising. So the market might well have factored in something in TeraWulf's share price. I'm sort of scratching my head a little bit, because there are a number of other miners like Bitfarms at sort of even a higher hash rate. They've got 11.3 exahash. You've got the likes of Bitdeer, CIFR coming 9.1 exahash. Why have Wulf been given such a big premium for their current business services?
It seems
to think that, it seems to think the market's got something it's set on there for the future for TeraWulf in terms of maybe a HPC contract.
No, it's a good point, Anthony. We've really seen the focus on exahash. This was the theme at the start of the year, right? These big announcements about option purchase agreements for X amount of miners and terahash and exahash. We've really seen the emphasis come off of that, both from a valuation perspective and with a number of these companies, CEOs now saying they've either abandoned or taken their foot off the gas in terms of some of their growth targets for this year and next. So really a changing dynamic or changing narrative in the space. But a great session today, Anthony. We've covered a lot of ground. I'll throw it back to you for any closing thoughts. But if you guys are still with us here, make sure you hit the like button. Feel free to subscribe. Check out the website. Let us know what you think of the platform, the newsletter itself. And of course, feel free to leave any comments, questions in the section below. Anthony, I'll throw it back to you for some closing thoughts, but great dialogue today.
Yeah. So later this week, we've got some great podcasts coming out. We're going to look at how some of these, well, in fact, all these mining companies on here, how they're valued in terms of the balance sheet valuation. So we're going to look at a number of metrics that highlight that there. So looking forward to sharing that with people there, and it will provide some intriguing results. We've talked before about some of these miners. So we look at that middle group there, the likes of Digital, Hive Digital. Both of those companies have self-mining businesses, but they've also been operating in the HPC, and both are getting significant revenues. Digital, annualized revenue of over 50 million for their contract, which was planned to grow to 92 in July, but I think that's been put back a few months while they assess the increase in these the latest machines available with the client's preference for a significantly more powerful machine. So they're looking into delivering that. Once they deliver that, that'll be sort of getting their target very, very close to 100 million annualized revenue just in the HPC, and probably about 40 million in terms of Bitcoin mining revenue at today's prices. And if you look at the market capitalization there, 400 million, this is a company with absolutely zero debt on the balance sheet. And it has a significant amount of treasury in terms of cash equivalents, Bitcoin, Ethereum on the treasury there, well over, last time I looked, it was close to 200 million. So when you start looking at enterprise values for some of these mid-tier miners, you sort of get a feeling that there's some value out there. But never look at one metric on its own. We'll be looking at 5 metrics on the balance sheet later this week, to give you an indication of how all these miners are assessed, and you can start. That'll give you a helping start in your due diligence when you start looking at miners going forward.
Yeah, it certainly will. A good reminder, and another reminder, we have Sebastian on tomorrow alongside Anthony for a Q&A. We'll see you here tomorrow. You guys feel free to bring your answers, and looking forward to a good discussion.